Why does it seem like the American Uniparty is always trying to end the world? America's establishment politicians, its institutions, the intelligence community, and the military-industrial complex have all provided the logic that have led us up to this point. A war with Iran that was admittedly started at the behest of Israel. And when you ask members of this uniparty about the benefits we might receive from our steadfast support for Israel, the most that they seem to be able to muster is that we get God's blessing or that it's in the Bible. And behind closed doors, some of those same individuals are secretly trying to accelerate the events that they believe will lead to Armageddon. We've seen tweets from our president about ending the entirety of Iranian civilization, leaks that Hegseth and company are framing Iran as a holy war, constant rumors of the construction of a third temple. Again, why aren't our elected leaders on both sides of the aisle trying to stop us from barreling headfirst into the end of the world? In fact, if anything, they seem to be greasing the skids. Well, if you want to talk about conspiracy theories, something frustrating is bound to happen to you eventually. You'll come up with some claims. You might say something like, they're trying to thin out the world's population through COVID vaccines, which are actually giving people heart problems in a system that actively denies it's doing so. Or that The Simpsons predicts the future because they need consent from the populace before doing what they plan to do. Or even simply that they're turning the frickin' frogs gay. Someone a bit more skeptical than you might ask, who are they? If we're talking about the classic set of conspiracy theories from the 20th century, we'll be talking about the British monarchy or the Rothschilds, or the Rothschilds controlling the strings of the British monarchy. As World War II ends, Israel becomes a nation state in Palestine, and Pax Americana begins with Bretton Woods. The US government takes the place of the British monarchy. If you believe that wealthy Jewish bankers were the illustrious they, then your ire was exported to Israel. The intelligence communities, namely the CIA, Mossad, and MI6, became the new apparatus for the state to execute conspiracies. Still others blame the Freemasons or the Illuminati or some other convergence of secret societies. But let's explore this post-World War II shift for a moment from a purely geopolitical lens. What do you do when you suddenly become the world's most powerful country? What do you have to do to keep that hegemony long term? America had some huge advantages off the bat. Sure, we were rich by global standards, but we also had a country that could grow vast amounts of food, be separated from its enemies on either side by an entire ocean, claim moral superiority after the defeat of the Third Reich, and write its hegemony into international law. The thing we really needed in the long run was oil. Vast, secure, unfettered access to energy. And where do we get that oil? At first, we shored up energy production domestically and relied on neighbors like Mexico and Venezuela. But eventually, we set our eyes on the Middle East. Following our own lead in South America, where the CIA had begun its toppling of leftist leaders left and right, we orchestrated a coup in Iran when its leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, nationalized the nation's oil fields. We began our special relationship with Israel in earnest to project American power into the region. We got involved with figures like Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden and flipped allegiances whenever convenient. Even though we had our fingerprints on just about every region of the world, our involvement in the Middle East seemed above and beyond, especially as we became embroiled in a set of forever wars. But you can't just say this stuff out loud. You can't tell the American people that in order to secure stable energy markets, we're going to send your child to die in a bunch of Middle East wars. And Israel created the perfect opportunity to create that alibi. Dispensationalism is the evangelical framework that claims God reveals himself to humanity in eras or dispensations. And there's been a lot of buzz around the word lately. Many dispensationalists believe that the founding of Israel as a nation state fulfills long-standing biblical prophecy, and that we should support Israel regardless of any conditions.
This is silly. I'm talking about the political entity of modern Israel.
Yes, and that is
you believe
Israel.
That's what God was talking about in Genesis.
I do, but
that country's existed since when?
For thousands of years. Now, there was a time when it didn't exist, and then it was recreated just over 70 years ago.
I'm saying, I think most people understand that line in Genesis to refer to the Jewish people, God's chosen people.
That's not what it says.
Okay, Israel, but you don't even know where in the Bible it is. So I don't know if we can...
But to what end? What does all this support get us? Well, apparently, it speeds up the end of the world. Our unconditional support is supposed to lead to Armageddon, a cataclysm so dire that Jesus Christ himself has to intervene in order to save humanity. After that, he's supposed to usher in 1,000 years of peace. But what cataclysm involving Israel could directly lead to the end of the entire world as we know it? And the first thing that comes to mind is nuclear warfare. In fact, we have a term for that day when countries decide to exchange nuclear weapons en masse. We call it nuclear Armageddon. The doomsday clock is forever measuring just how close we are to that day. And yet these evangelicals want to inch us closer and closer to Armageddon still. At the end of the world, they truly believe that they'll be standing on the side of Jesus Christ, who will wield unimaginable power and weapons in their defense. Not unlike how the Jews of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago believed that Jesus Christ would deliver them from the hands of their Roman occupiers. So, we use dispensationalism as a moral framework for invading the Middle East to secure stable oil markets. This ultimately divides people into two distinct camps: true believers and cynics. The true believers are those evangelicals that want to egg on the end of times, and the cynics are just in it for American empire. Protecting Israel becomes about prophecy and power projection. The cynics ultimately ally themselves with the true believers because both of them are getting what they want, and because the true believers end up being great evangelists for the cause. Popular opinion sways in favor of Middle East intervention, and both parties get what they want. Now enter the sorcerer's apprentice. You see, the cynics are just using the true believers to obtain some goal, and then they think they'll be able to reel them in afterwards. But as we've seen time and time again, especially in an era where liberal governments are being replaced by more hardline ones, this doesn't always work out. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, you saw the situation unfold with Queen Cersei and the High Sparrow. Once the cynic does lose control of the true believer, we're stuck in a self-fulfilling prophecy doom spiral. American empire attempted to use dispensationalists to justify its continuous involvement in the Middle East, but didn't account for the day that those evangelicals would take the wheel. And now you have Pete Hegseth talking about holy wars and members of our military framing Iran as a pathway toward Armageddon. Factional alliances work because everyone gets something out of the relationship. It's just a matter of incentives. That's the exact reason why they seem one step ahead of the game at all times, and why they are so able to expertly coordinate their actions. It's because no one has to coordinate in the first place. Everyone is simply acting in their best interest. Take, for example, the idea that the US government, media, and other industries came together to hide Joe Biden's cognitive decline during the 2024 presidential election. This seeming conspiracy is best explained by a factional alliance where multiple groups were getting something that they wanted. The true believers thought Biden was the only guy to beat Trump, and some of them even convinced themselves that the cognitive decline wasn't going on. All of the political operatives around Biden, the cynics, were willing to ride Biden's coattails, even if it meant elder abuse. And the members of Congress and the media that refused to speak up and kept silent were simply trying to keep their jobs at a time where the Biden administration was actively targeting and silencing dissent. No one had to gather these people into a back room and explain it to them. They just all had a vested interest in keeping up the appearance that Biden was okay. And it also explains why US foreign policy has been marching the world towards Armageddon for over 50 years. American empire and Washington's Uniparty think that they can use the dispensationalists to achieve their goals and then control them once their ambitions have been met. The true believers, on the other hand, do not.
This is the age of misinformation, get information. No homosexuals, Democrats, or immigrants in your nation. I gotta think about anything else. I try to cope, but it's bad for my health.